In ordinary consciousness, when people wish to refer to the being that presents itself in their physical bodies, they speak of that being as capital I. In the sensory world, then, healthy soul life depends upon feeling oneself separate from the rest of the world. To designate some external process or being as belonging to the I would violate this health. But this is not the case when one experiences oneself as an etheric being in the elemental world. In the elemental world, your own being, your I, merges with certain processes and beings around you. You must, therefore, find your etheric nature in something that is not inner, in the sense that you have become accustomed to understand that concept in the sensory world. Forces, processes, and beings exist in the elemental world that, even though they are in a sense outside, must be considered as if they belonged to one's own I. The interaction of forces and processes in the etheric human being seem just as inner and just as intimate as thoughts in the sensory world, but they do not act like thoughts. They are like beings who live with and in the soul. Therefore, suprasensory cognition needs more inner strength than the soul normally needs to maintain its independence from its thoughts. The fundamental preparation for true spiritual vision, therefore, consists in so strengthening and empowering the soul that it feels itself as an independent being. The soul must feel itself a separate being, not only when it contains thoughts, but also when the powers and beings of the elemental world enter its field of consciousness as part of its own being. So long as you cannot commit to developing this inner strength, you will have an understandable dread of admitting your spiritual environment. Unconsciously you will reach for the illusion that the spiritual world does not exist or cannot be known. That illusion will help you past your instinctive dread that your own being, your I, is intertwined or merged with a real outer spiritual world. If you understand the facts described above, you will recognize that there is an etheric human being behind the physical or sensory human being, and an etheric elemental or suprasensory world behind the physical world. As you live into the elemental world, you will begin to see that the partially independent beings exist there in a greater context. Looking at the limbs of the human body, you observe first their partial independence. Then you recognize that they exist as parts within the total body. Suprasensory consciousness will similarly see the individual beings in the elemental world existing as living members of a greater spiritual body, the Earth's elemental, suprasensory, living body. The etheric human being feels itself to be a member of this life body of the Earth. To advance in spiritual vision in this way is to gain ever deeper insight into the nature of the elemental world. That world is alive with many kinds of beings. You will see, too, how spiritual seeds are unfolding within the earth that will, in the future, enable another realm, in a sense a new earth, to arise. In my book titled An Outline of Esoteric Science, I mentioned why that out of which the earth evolved is called Old Moon, and why we call the world toward which the earth is moving Jupiter. It is important to understand these terms correctly. Old Moon refers to a long-gone world from which Earth was formed by transformation. Jupiter, in the spiritual sense, means a future world toward which Earth is now evolving.